Well, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So excited to be here.
Yeah,
We're here bright and early.
bright and early. Yeah. Is this your first time to Oregon?
No, I've been to Oregon a bunch of times, but never to Salem.
All right, Portland then.
Yes.
All right. Well,
It's like a capital of food. I've totally been there a bunch
Portland?
of times. Yeah, it's so good.
Well, Salem is the capital of Oregon, so here we are. Much smaller. It's like Portland's younger sibling.
And we got chives this morning from a local spot.
We did.
Right?
Yeah. Very
Mark's.
good. Yes, Isaac's.
Well, but his name is Mark, right?
His name's Mark. Isaac's. Yeah, Isaac's is the shop. So if you're ever in Salem, Oregon, show up to Isaac's.
And get the chai.
The chai, Matole's chai. That's my favorite.
It's really good.
Yeah. Well, Ellen, thanks for joining us.
Oh my God, I'm so happy to be
here. Yeah,
here.
we're excited to have you in town. We've been looking forward to it for a few months now, ever since we first sort of engaged. So a little bit about you. I'll let you do a lot of intro, but I'll just say some things. $300 in your pocket when you started. You were kind of, what'd you say, bottom of the food chain at a restaurant?
Oh yeah.
Big restaurant though, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And kind of bottom totem pole and sous chef, right? Guy in charge?
Not even. Not even.
Okay, so not even the...
I was just a line cook.
Okay, but the sous chef was the one that came and said, we need aprons?
Yes.
Okay, yes. Need aprons, $300 in your pocket. You make this multi-million-dollar company, Headley and Bennett, is that?
Yep, that's
Headley
right.
and Bennett, yeah. CEO and founder of Headley and Bennett, author of Dream First, the Details Later.
That's right.
So I hope that you dive into a lot of that and
Yeah.
you share some more details to your story as you introduce yourself. And then I have some questions for you I'd love to get into.
Bring it on, Chris.
But
Bring it on.
But just take it away. Take it away.
No, it's been a wild journey as we sit here and talk about our kids and do all these adulting things.
Yeah.
Whew, when I started this, I was not an adult. I was a child. I was 24 and I was working as a line cook and I hated our uniforms, and it was one of these things that I had grown up running and doing a lot of sports, and I always felt like every time I got into a sport, I started with a uniform and it made you feel like,
look good, play good.
Yeah, I'm a runner now. Let's do this.
Oh yeah, athletes, you look good, you play good. It's
Right?
like, yep.
Totally. It's a vibe. And I feel like that vibe really kind of affected the way I showed up. And when I lived in Mexico City, I decided I wanted to start running. And then I signed up for the New York Marathon. And I actually got in. I don't know if you know, but it's like a raffle thing. You don't just get into the New York Marathon. You gotta,
Well, that's awesome.
vie to get yourself in. And I got in and I thought, okay, I gotta get a uniform. I gotta get my gear on. And I went and got myself a great Nike outfit. And I put those shorts on, I put that shirt on, and I was like, let's do this. And it was this feeling that was so empowering. And I was just a, scrappy little 20-something-year-old. And so that feeling stayed with me for a long time. So cut to me in this 2 Michelin star restaurant in LA, working my butt off. Like, we're talking 13 hours a day, just grinding. I had come back from Mexico. I was living with my mom again. I was trying to become a chef. The grind was on, and I was like, this is so weird that we are all like athletes, but we don't look like athletes and we don't feel like athletes.
Looking like scrubs back here.
I mean, basically, it was a scrappy ragtag situation, and yet we were flying fish in from Japan that were $1,000 loins. It just didn't make any sense to me. So I thought, we are elite, our ingredients are elite. We are serving $1,000 meals. We need to align our feels with that level of quality. And that was the original idea. And, I think a lot of ideas today, I'm going to talk about innovation, but a lot of really brilliant ideas start with one person and one idea. It's not like 500 people got together and decided Headley and Bennett should be born. It was one girl with one idea, and it was me. And it lit something inside of me like a little, and I couldn't have it. I couldn't get it to go away. It's just like I had to pursue it. It just was like this thing that was gnawing at me every day, because every day I would go in and every day I would look at people and it was just a terrible scene in there. And I was like, we could have more dignity and pride in the kitchen. Let's do this. Why not? And everybody was like, good luck. That's a dumb idea. And I was 24. I was making $10 an hour. I was at the bottom of the barrel of this kitchen. And so it started there. And I think life sometimes does this to you. I had this thought, and then a few weeks later, my chef said to me, like, hey, we have a girl, she's gonna make aprons for us. Do you wanna buy one? And I was like, what girl? I'm the girl. Like, I couldn't, it wasn't me. It was somebody else. Okay. And I was like, there's no way. That was my idea. And I just blurted it out of my face faster than I could like actually process it. I just said, chef, I have an apron company. Like, I'll make you those aprons. He's like, what are you talking about? You're a line cook in my kitchen. And I'm like, no, I've had this idea. I have a doing business as, which I did. I had gone and gotten myself a little doing business as in LA. And I just, right there on the spot, convinced him to give me this girl's order. I don't know who the girl is, but thank you, lady, for taking the leap before I did. And he gave me this apron order, 40 aprons, and that was it. That was how Headley and Bennett began. And besides my doing business as, I had nothing. Just this concept. And so sometimes you look at a business and you're like, wow, that's so professional and corporate and proper, but the beginning roots were not. You know, Apple started in a garage. Like, it was just a concept that grew. You talk a lot about seeds and roots. It was like, this was a tiny little seed with a tiny little root, just a little bing. Yeah. And that was it. And I just kept watering it, and I turned it into something. But man, it was elementary and basic, and nobody believed in it. And it took me having to cheerlead myself on for years before it actually was strong enough to like be out in the world and stand on its own 2 feet. And I'm incredibly proud of it now. And people are like, oh my God, you're such a success. It's like 11-year overnight success. Yeah. 35 years old. I was 24 when I started it. But so it's been a journey, and I have seen some things, Chris. If I could tell you, I'm like,
seen some things.
Whoa, I got the gray hairs to prove it.
Yeah, the growth that you experience when you're pushing yourself at that level, it's different than if you kind of floated for 11 years.
100%.
Right, and we talk a lot about in our curriculum in our institute about the difference between transaction and transformation. And we can live transactional lives, just go through the motions, show up, clock in, do the thing, and maybe have a little bit of a sort of a dream, like glimpses of it, but the fear of what it means to actually pursue that, I settle for mediocrity or settle for less. And to break through that is when we say that's when transformation can start to happen. And it's clearly your story, which I think is incredible. So tell us a little bit about the timeline. I mean, 11 years to where you are, $300 now to, multi-million-dollar company. Yeah. I mean, when was kind of the big break, what it was like, wow, this is actually pretty big. Like, how long did it take for that?
To this day, I still never really think, it's huge. I'm like, what are we gonna do? What's the next thing? Yeah. Like, it's just this like relentless drive that I have within me.
Happy but never satisfied sort of.
Totally, and you know what I think it is also? It's like, I never rest on my laurels. If we've made a moment of success, I'm like, that's amazing. What can I do to learn from that and then replicate it, but do it even bigger? And so I take every success as a push to the next chapter. Yeah. Because now other people see it as a success, and they're like, well, can I do what she's doing? And I'm like, you can, but I'm going to make sure that I'm always ahead. Yeah. Because it's been so much work to get it to where it is, and I'm so proud of it. But I think the bigger amplification, the bigger platform we have, the more people we can impact, right? Yeah. And I think that was a big moment in my journey. It was like deciding, do I want to stay small, homegrown, keep it like mom and pop, or do I want to go to that next level that is out of my comfort zone? It's like bringing on outside capital. It's bringing on people that are of a much higher caliber to get to that next scale. Yeah. And I had to make a choice. This was about 6-7 years in. I decided, okay, in order for Headley and Bennett to be this iconic heritage brand that I want it to be, I'm going to need to expand out of my little cove and go into the ocean. Yeah. And so I had to like hitch my boat to a bigger boat and like push out into the world. And that was terrifying. And as somebody that didn't go get an MBA or didn't go to business school, there was a little bit of, I guess you could call it, for, people use the word imposter syndrome, but it was really just like lack of knowledge. Yeah. And I never felt bad because I didn't have that knowledge. I just knew I needed it. Yeah. And so I was like, how do I get more knowledge? Well, I need smarter people around the table with me. So that was a big, hard decision along the way. But even before I got to that stage, there were so many moments where, Martha Stewart called, and it was like, whoa, Martha freaking Stewart just asked us to outfit all of her cafes across the country in Macy's. That's a big freaking deal. And we had maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 employees at the time. Like, it was not a big operation.
Yeah.
So that was a big moment. But financially, it wasn't a big moment. It was just like the name was a big moment. So we had to like take these big moments that didn't necessarily have a lot of money tied to them and kind of push the boat along from big moment to little moment and keep it alive with more and more projects, more and more restaurants, and get resourceful and creative. And I think sometimes you see an article in Forbes magazine, you're like, man, they have it figured out. Yeah. And then behind the scenes, they're like, they're not making any money. And so as a scrappy, bootstrapped founder, I found myself with a lot of moments where the brand seemed giant, and yet financially we were struggling, or I like had a hard time making payroll, or I couldn't afford certain things. And so it was a scrappy, hard journey on my own.
Yeah.
And I say this out loud because I need people to know that it is not some like perfect, glorious path where I'm just like, woo, sitting here and having just figured it out. Like I had to figure it out every day because I had to reignite my fire, that little fire I told you about. I had to reignite it every morning. Like I had to wake up and be like, light that match, turn that sucker on, because you got to get out there and try again.
Yeah.
And it's that again and again and again. And that's why having like a deeply rooted purpose is so valuable.
Yeah.
Because it's the thing that drives you, or else you're kind of screwed because it's so hard.
Yeah. No.
But it is. It's real. It's hard building something out of nothing.
Yeah. No, it is. And lots of things that you said I want to kind of touch on. I mean, I'm hearing a lot about being okay with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
Which is a never-ending journey. You know, I mean, I try to teach my little ones that. We're talking about kids. I try to teach them that.
Yeah.
Try to teach kids that I coach. And then like leaders that are executives, the same thing.
Yeah.
How do we be okay with being uncomfortable? So that's one thing. You kind of came back to the thing that I think is the ultimate motivator to that, which is having a purpose, which you just said. There's a lot wrapped in there, but tell us about how do you, now you said purpose, but how do you manage being okay with being uncomfortable? And even almost seeking it out.
Yeah.
And because that's what I heard when you said, now we're going bigger.
Yep.
And it's like, I'm getting too comfortable. What's the next thing?
That's right.
How do you, what do you say to yourself in those moments?
Yeah.
How do you get yourself to be okay with it? Because I think there's a lot of people, whether they're starting a big company or they're the bottom of the barrel, chef, whatever that might mean for them.
Yeah.
Everybody has to face on being uncomfortable.
That's right.
How do you work through that?
Yeah, no, I mean, one of the things I talk a lot about in my book is like you're going through life and you're building on your confidence belt. Like every time you do something hard, you add a notch onto your little life confidence belt. And it is not easy to get those notches. But every time you go through something hard, you add one. And so I think of my time when I lived in Mexico City. I decided to move there when I was 18. And I was by myself, and my parents were like, that's a crazy idea. I don't know that that's a good idea. And I did it anyway, and I had to find jobs. I had to get a Mexican citizenship, which was incredibly challenging, believe it or not. Like, to do that as a foreigner is actually really, really difficult. And these were things that, as an 18-year-old, they were like massive challenges alone in a foreign country by yourself, nobody around. So that was like, bam, notch on my confidence belt. When my parents got divorced when I was 9 years old, huge notch of like challenge and adversity. And I could have looked at those moments as like, woe is me.
Yeah.
How come that happened to me? And instead I look at them as like, no, you know what? You're lucky that you got to experience that challenge because it made you that much stronger. And so I've like taken these hard moments and I've turned them into like, I graduated like a level in the Super Mario Brothers journey of Ellen Bennett. It's like, I just fought a dragon. That means now I can fight 2 dragons.
You just beat Rainbow Road.
100%. I'm just trying to beat Rainbow Road. But no, I really think like COVID was an incredibly challenging time for all people. As a business owner, I can't even tell you how hard it was. But I made all these pivots. I adapted our factory into a face mask facility within 24 hours. That was one of the most challenging experiences of my life. And I walked out of COVID being stronger than ever before because I had to survive that and because I had to adapt and figure it out. And when you are like pushed against the wall with a hard circumstance, I truly believe you figure things out much more effectively than when you have all the time in the world and no care.
Yeah, the constraints.
Exactly.
The creative constraints.
That's right.
I think are some of the best ingredients and elements to creating innovation and
absolutely. And your necessity level just like skyrockets. Like you have to figure it out. There is no alternative. So I think when I blurted out to my chef, I'll make those aprons for you, I pushed my necessity level so high because I was just like, now I have to deliver. My job is on the line. I'm not going to be able to back out of this. I work for the man. He's an important dude. Like I just stacked myself in adversity so I couldn't back out. And I feel like that has been the lever that I constantly pull where I'm like, okay, well, you can't get out of the New York Marathon. You can't get out of being in Mexico. You can't get out of this order. And that shoved me on my path. It's not that I have more confidence than you. I'm just willing to throw myself in front of a bullet train and figure out how to get off the tracks fast. I'm just willing to do that. And now I'm much more nimble than when I first started.
Yeah, in our curriculum, we have this, in a section we call the Deeply See section, which is all about having purpose. One of the elements we talk about is suffering well. Like how can we suffer through something well, whether it's something that wasn't our choice, that we didn't put up on us, which some of the things you mentioned weren't your choice.
Totally.
Divorce, when those things aren't your choice. Versus I'm going to go live in the FA when I'm 18, that was more your choice, right?
Totally.
But either way, it brings about challenges.
Yes.
Suffering, that's a more powerful word to use, but challenges, suffering, difficulties. And how do we go through those well? Because we can choose to go through them poorly, 100%. And they almost become pointless. We develop resentment, bitterness, anger, and there's no meaning from it. Or we can choose to suffer well, where we create resilience. We create work ethic. Even we can develop compassion because we know what it feels like, and then we get incredible meaning out of it. Which sounds like that's what has happened for you. Now, specifically, I had a question when you're talking about when you went to Mexico City. Back then, because in storytelling, I do a lot of storytelling. When we reflect on stories, it's almost like we relive them and see them almost differently now that they're in the past than in the moment. But with that, testing the mics. But with that, did you have the foresight at 18 to think, this experience is going to benefit me in the future, or was it just I'm going in?
Oh no, talk about a dream first, details later moment. That is the name of my book, and that is how I lived my life for a long time. I was like, I'm going to go for 2 months, and it's going to be great. I don't know what's going to happen, but I know it's going to be good because I'm out of my zone. I'm not going to grow living in my mom's house by myself. Like, I'm not going to school. What am I doing? And I thought, okay, being there will help me because I'll see a different perspective and context. And that it was just like the beginning seed of this concept. And I think that's like a big thing. A lot of what I've done has been like a good initial idea, but I don't have the thing fully baked. Hence the concept, dream first, details later. It's like, you can have a seed of an idea and go after it and discover so much more while you're walking down the road than like thinking about what it could be. And so I knew if I could just get myself to Mexico, I'll figure it out from there. And it erupted into this whole magical world that really helped me find my life sea legs and like pushed me through so much adversity and challenge and learning and experience that it actually made me realize that I was the driver of my own car. Like, I think of life is this road and we are the car, and sometimes you forget you're driving your car and you just are being dragged by life along the way. And when you put yourself in the driver's seat, you're like, all right, I'm actually driving this. I can accelerate, I can slow it down, I can get people in, I can get people out. Like, it's up to me. And I think when I handed that responsibility to myself, I wasn't waiting for my mom to do something for me or waiting for my dad to show up. I had to show up for myself or else the car literally stopped on the highway. And that is pretty powerful. Man, if people can just remember that, like that is so huge. That was one of my biggest takeaways. And it was also like, didn't matter the style of the car or how much stuff I had.
Yeah.
It was actually me that made this whole experience. And if I could do it in Mexico, I could do it in the US. And that was like game changing, because I realized I'm the change. I'm the driver.
You're in control, right?
That's right.
And the choice, the power of choice, or the agency that you have of how you're going to respond and how you're going to work with the circumstances of life, that's a powerful thing. And I think one of my mentors once said, he said too many people live far beneath their potential. And I think that it's because of this, is what you're talking about, is we let the transactions of life control us,
That's right.
And if something happens, whether it's financial, relationships, divorce, it could be anything, and we let that say, this is, I'm going to let that control and how I feel and who I am, instead of saying, no, I'm going to choose how I'm going to let that become part of my life, and what I'm going to do with it. And maybe, you had this as well. My dad, an immigrant to the country, he instilled that in me. And he 100%. Wasn't a wild financial success, right? At all. But what he did have was this sort of grit and tenacity, where he instilled in me that, I don't expect any handouts, and you have to work for everything that you have, and you have to be humble while doing it. And
you got to figure it out.
You got to figure it out, and he never made any excuses. A lot of times he was treated with all sorts of prejudice and judgment. Never was resentful about it. He was always bigger chip on it's a notch on the belt, bigger chip on the shoulder of, I'm not going to let this hold me back. And so I'm grateful for him for teaching me that, because he could have been the opposite.
Totally.
Those moments in his life that he experienced, that he could have used that to create resentment in me, create anger in me, and maybe more entitlement, but he didn't.
I definitely think it's an immigrant mentality, and I'm so grateful for it, because my mother is Mexican, my dad is English, so I got to grow up watching her have to fight so hard for everything she did. Like, she had a nursing degree in Mexico, she had to come back to the States and redo everything to be able to be a nurse in the States, and nothing was just like, here it is. Everything was twice as hard, and yet she always showed up. And after my parents got divorced, I watched her work her butt off to keep us, having a nice life. And we were totally lock-key kids, watching my mom work so hard and never complaining, but simply showing up and doing it good every day. And that's invaluable. Like, I'm actually incredibly grateful that my parents got divorced. It's a funny thing to say, but it definitely was like the adversity that truly, I think, made me an entrepreneur. Because it just made me go, okay, it's up to me. I'm in the driver's seat. My parents aren't going to do this for me. They're not just going to be like, here's a great college, and here's a great thing, and here's your first car, and here's your first house. Like, and for people that have that, man, kudos. Don't waste that. You're so lucky. But I didn't have any of that, and it made me that much stronger.
And that's what I found with suffering well, is we end up having this weird relationship with the suffering, where it's like, I don't know if I would wish that upon anyone, or if I necessarily want to go relive that, but man, I'm grateful that it happened.
Totally.
Because it's made me who I am today. And that's powerful. And that's choice. That's a choice. And what I've learned with speaking with so many, put it simply, this is a gross oversimplification, but hyper successful, motivated, high performing people, through these podcasts, through all the leaders that I get to work with, it's an attribute that I find in common, is that they have that same sort of grit and choice, where they've harnessed it, and I'm not going to make excuses, and I'm going to just go forward. So for anybody listening, that's something that we always need to work on, but how do we instill that in others? You mentioned, if you had a lot handed to you, be grateful for it. How do you learn? I mean, I was talking about this with my wife the other day, of how do we, because she grew up very different than me, right? She had all of her needs, always met in abundance. My parents did a great job making sure I was taken care of, but she had an abundance, and so she knows the value of my perspective, where it was not known to me that when I'm an adult, I have to take care of myself, you know?
Right.
Like I have to pay for my own schooling. I got to do everything, you know?
Yep.
And I can't rely upon anybody to be a financial sort of support to me. I just got to go do it.
Yep.
And so she's seen that as helpful, but we've also talked, how do we teach our kids that? Because I want to provide a great life for my kids.
Totally.
I don't want them to have to worry about, you know, how we're going to live month to, you know, everything was always month to month in my house.
Yeah.
I don't want them to have to worry ever about that, but I also want them to learn the things I learned and being part of that life and growing up and being like, I got to make it on my own because my parents ain't going to give me anything.
Exactly.
You know, I mean, my parents live with me right now, you know, like this. And in the Filipino culture, that's just circle of life. You know, you take care of them.
Yeah.
But I don't want my kids to have to worry about those things, but also I want them to learn.
Yeah. You're like, but I do.
Yeah. So how do, like, I'm curious for you, from both, not just parenting standpoint, but even with your employees and those that you mentor, how do you want to provide great opportunities for them, but also instill in them, like, you gotta hustle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so tricky because everybody has a different circumstance and a different upbringing. But I think that what I really like to instill in people is just that, like, you are responsible for your own journey. So do not put it on anyone else because you are doing yourself an injustice by saying it's your mother or your father or your neighbor or your dad or that opportunity you didn't get. Like, it's on you. And that's like first and foremost. And you can be an entrepreneur within a company. You can be an entrepreneur outside of a company. Like, there are different ways to be entrepreneurial. Entrepreneurial just means like taking the leap and not necessarily knowing where you're going to land. Like, that is the definition of an entrepreneur to me. It's like having enough vision and conviction to leap out the window and not know where you're gonna fall, but know you're gonna make it eventually. And it's scary and it's also awesome. And when people can just get into action, I find that they start to actually learn on their own. So it's like when you want to do a Peloton and you're staring at the bike and you're like, I really should do that. Man, that bike, it's right there. I'd feel so much better after I got, but just get on the effing bike and start the class. Like, that is my number one thing, because I could say all the things in the world, but a person, you are going to learn so much more by walking down the path than me telling you about the path, than your mom talking about the path. And so that path could be a new project. It could be a job opportunity. Maybe you've worked at a company for 10 years and you want to get a bigger job. Guess what you got to do? You got to go stick yourself in front of HR. You got to show up early. You got to go and talk to your boss. You got to do things that other people are not doing for someone to notice you. And then all of a sudden, bam, that opportunity is there. I wanted to write a book. Nobody showed up on my doorstep and said, Ellen, Penguin Random House would like you to write a book about entrepreneurship. I had to put ideas together. I had to forge this journey. I had to grow a business.
Some people actually get that. Like, some people are like, somebody wants you to write a book.
Totally.
I have people in my life that have had that happen. That
but that was not my circumstance. I had to go and get it. And so you got to put yourself in the ocean of life to get those moments. And that is just the constant reminder I have to myself and that I give to others. They're like, but how do I do it? It's like, first step, take a step. Like, take a step into the direction of the thing that you want, and you will get there. If you just decide you're gonna go do that, and then you take actions to back it up. Dreaming and hoping are not the same thing as doing something towards that thing. And that might seem so simple, but every major thing I've done in my life was because I decided I was gonna go do something, and then I backed it up with a ton of action without fear that I was gonna fail along the way. And I just kept trying, and I'd fall down bleeding, and I was like, okay, couldn't make payroll this week, and I had to get a loan. I'm gonna figure it out next week. Okay, I did that. Oh, we almost lost our building because something happened. Every single time something horrible happened, the next day I lit my little fire, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna figure it out because I'm still on my path.
Yeah, you know what I like about the title of your book, even, Dream First, Details Later, is oftentimes the details are what invoke the fear.
100%.
In people, and
100%.
And what I found, we talk about this again in our curriculum, is when you have a potential for something, and we'll call it dreaming for the sake of your book, is you have a dream of something that could be, and immediately what you have to acknowledge in those moments is that there's an opposite to that. Like there's the failure. And as soon as you create the conditions for what success could be, you're also creating the conditions for what failure could be.
Absolutely.
And that's the fear of failure, right? And I think that's where the details, if we, I have this idea, oh my gosh, all the things that I'm going to have to do or become or think about in order for that to happen, it's just, it's overwhelming. I'm just gonna settle for this,
Yeah.
I'll settle for a subpar mediocrity. And in worst case scenarios, I actually fall short. Like I go the opposite direction. And that's what I hear when the details. Sometimes the details bring fear, and so I like what you're saying. Just start. Get towards it. See that you can be moving in that direction, and then when the details arise, you've already overcome that fear of failure. Because what's the worst that can happen? Well, you can fail.
Yeah, and you know what I also feel like is when I am trying something.
Yeah.
In the time that I can try something 5 times and fail 5 times, there's other people that are just thinking about starting. So get on the path and try a bunch of things and fail a bunch. And by the time you get to a place where you're like, awesome, I did it. You got 7 notches on your confidence belt. Yeah. You learned all these things that are gonna make you that much stronger. Meanwhile, homie over here is just barely beginning on the road. He hasn't even started.
He's just mapping out all the details.
He's just mapping out the details, and you already learned real life challenges that he's gonna experience too.
Yeah.
But yet you got ahead of him because you were out there just trying and learning. That's why I say, like, I failed so often and I slammed my face so hard, but I was so quick to get back up and try again and fail again that maybe I didn't have an MBA, maybe I didn't go to a fancy school, but man, I learned so much, like school of hard knocks by just trying stuff, that I was able to figure out things that maybe somebody that went to, got an MBA wouldn't have figured out until 2 years later because they had to go get some like fancy analysis done on the business, and I just like failed. Yeah. I'm like, that didn't work. Okay, let's try something else. It's like simple. Just do it. Just try. Just evolve, and then learn from it. And don't get too emotionally tied up with like, I failed. I'm a failure. Yeah. Your failure doesn't make you a failure. Yeah. Like that's just something you experience, but it's not you as a human. That's just a notch.
Yeah, I call it failing forward,
Hell yeah.
You're gonna fall on your face.
Yes.
Don't fall backwards.
Right, and then get your ass back up and try again.
Yeah.
I don't know any successful person that doesn't fail. One of my favorite sayings is, if they're not bumps in the road, they are the road. Like, it is not just exclusive to you and I to fail. It's exclusive to all people on the road because the road has the bumps.
And it's some of the best education because you've seen it before.
That's right.
And so you've failed in a way where, like you said, the homie over here that's doing an analysis, he's not going to fail. He might get to the same place, but he didn't experience what that failure's like, and that's some of the best education,
And he doesn't know what it feels like to call American Express at 10 o'clock at night trying to get a line of credit extension and then having them say no. Like, my value towards money is so different. So when I went and got investors, my perspective of that cash is so sacred, and it's so like, that's money that we're going to use, and every dollar is going to go to a good place. It's very different than when someone's like, here's $50 million to go see if your idea is possible.
Oh, yeah.
Different feels.
Yeah. Yeah, we, love everything that you're getting into.
Oh, excuse me. Everyone. It arrived.
Had the magic hand just appear. Isn't that Kevin Hart's YouTube channel, White Hand, he calls it? Just the hand that appears. Thank you. Yeah, I love the book, colorful book. We've been talking about just the title. I mean, I assume that most of these things that you've been saying are all lodged in here.
They're jammed and crammed in there. They are in my soul. They're in the book.
The book, from the outside, it makes you want to read it. Dream first, details later, the colors. Like you said, there's a lot of thought that went into this. I don't know how much you had to say in the design. I know how that can work.
I had a lot of say.
Did you have a lot to say? Well, you are a designer. You created aprons. So
That's right.
Yeah, so love, I lost the train of thought since the magic hand appeared.
It was a beautiful hand. What can we say? We got
somewhere,
it's just like,
this book
and
appeared.
the head, the bald head, the flamingos on the shirt.
The flamingos
a lot
on
of
the shirt.
action going on with that hand.
Yeah, shout out to all the camera people in any of these things, they make it all work. Gosh, I can't remember what I was saying.
What were we talking about?
You're talking about like getting money like handed to you versus like kind of for it.
Yes, and then I was going to say something about that. It's okay. We'll wrap up here soon, anyways. This has been incredible. You know, I had a question that I told you about offline that was, and I feel like you've already answered it, but I'll just state the question so that now anybody listening or watching can be like, oh yeah, they did answer that. My question was, even if you're not an entrepreneur in the classic sense of I'm going to go start this business and make millions, not everybody, that's their life or that's their desire, but everybody has to deal with road bumps, like you said, the things in the road, the challenges that arise, the opportunities that arise, whether no matter what our organization is. And my question was, how do you use that same energy that you've used to create a successful company, even in those circumstances? But again, I feel like you've answered that well.
No, I mean, listen, I think that all of us have an entrepreneurial muscle and spirit within us. It's just about like tapping into it. And you tap into it by being uncomfortable. That's just like full stop. If you want to try something and you're afraid, like just go sign up for it. You're a terrible swimmer, get on a swim team. You don't know how to run, sign up for a marathon. Like go to the extreme of the thing that you're afraid of and lean in hard. And that will get you to be a little entrepreneurial in your own way. And as a business owner that now has many, many employees and investors, and I'm chairman of the board, and there are a lot of people that I have to report to, I still think of people when I hire them, I'm like, let's see if they're entrepreneurial enough to handle this environment. If you're just gonna come in here and be happy with what you have, this is not the environment for you. But if you want to be pushed out of your comfort zone and learn things and try new things that you've never done before, this is the place for you. And so just having that mindset is the way to make stuff happen. And I even in Headley and Bennett land, like we are no longer an apron company anymore. We call ourselves a culinary brand because now we sell knives and cutting boards and we're working on kitchen tools and pots and pans. None of that has to do with aprons, but we made this huge base of people that over 7,000 restaurants wear our aprons. If you ever watch Top Chef, they're wearing our aprons. Most shows on television wear our aprons. I could have said that was that. But instead, my team and I decided to push out of our comfort zone. And there are people within my company that said, let's work on these other products that we've never made before, that we don't know how to build a supply chain for. And then we had to go and build it. And those are like micro companies within Headley and Bennett. So that is, the evolution continues, even to this day, 11 years in. And I'm so happy that we are willing to not just sit there and be like, we're a successful apron company. It's like, hell no. We're gonna be a heritage, iconic brand for the ages and outfit all kitchens and make everyone feel legit and proper and beautiful and feel like they matter. And that's just not for professional kitchens, that can be for all home kitchens. And that's our next chapter.
It's inspiring. And I always feel so blessed to be able to, like I mentioned earlier, meet people like yourself, the leaders that we work with, because it makes me want to be better, makes me more okay with being uncomfortable. Because like you said earlier, what we see on the surface is never what's really happening.
That's right.
And there's a lot of discomfort, there's a lot of challenges, conflicts, struggles, and being able to just see that that's actually the reality makes you more okay with it. It's like, well, this is what would I expect? It's gonna be hard, right?
Exactly.
It's gonna be a challenge, and so thank you. It's inspiring to me. Makes me want to be better. Makes me want to be a better leader, a better entrepreneur, a better doer. I want to go get uncomfortable today, tomorrow, and the next day. Wait for that. I thought that was like a garbage can.
I thought it was a lawnmower.
Oh, I thought it was like somebody's moving like a garbage can across the sidewalk, but that sounded like a motorcycle. So I just appreciate you being who you are, and the best thing is you're a normal person. You put your pants on like the rest of us every day.
That's right.
You get
one
dressed
leg
like
at a time.
One leg at a time.
My husband says I leap into my pants, but whatever. That's another subject.
But I love it. I mean, you're a normal person, and what is inspiring about that is, and you said this earlier, is you want to inspire other people to unlock this in them. And that's what I'm all about. I'm all about that as well. I love when people, myself first, can accomplish something and achieve some form of higher potential. That's just what gets
It's so special.
So it gets me motivated.
Yeah, we like crack our own egg.
Yeah.
It's like, bam,
And
next stage.
And what makes me sad is when I don't do that, and when I see others don't do that. And so I love that you do that with your life for yourself, but everybody around you. You felt like, I want to tell people this story because they can do it, no matter the circumstance of life. I just think that's incredible. So you're doing a lot more than aprons, pans, knives, kitchenware. You're doing a lot more than that, and stuff that you'll never see, but that people will feel and be inspired by. So I hope that you realize that you're doing that.
Thank you.
In addition to creating products and building a business.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here, and look forward to you spending time with our leaders today.
Let's do it.
It's gonna be fun. All right. Great. Anything else you want to share?
I mean, I think for anyone listening, if they want to follow us on Instagram, it's such a fun way to just get a peek into our world.
Please.
Headley and Bennett and Ellen Marie Bennett. That's my personal one. And then go to our website, headleyandbennett.com, to
Get
get your
this book.
Get your gear.
I'm sure you can find this anywhere.
Definitely
right?
get the book.
Amazon.
Also, fun fact, I did the voiceover for the
Oh,
audio.
you're doing the audio read?
Damn right I did.
Love that.
So it's me just yelling at you to get your butt off the couch and get into life. So if you need a serious pep talk, download the Audible of Dream First, Details Later.
Yeah, that's my style. I'm a book listener now.
Me too. I
So-
love it. It's so easy, and everyone's driving, so
Yeah, working
take the
out,
time.
everything.
It's an easy read, and then the book is super colorful because business is not black and white. So why the hell should the book be?
Yeah, it's great. Love it. Awesome. Well, grab your book if you're listening. Check out the website and follow. Get an apron. I want to get one now,
That's right.
and I
Gotta get our knives.
Yeah, I gotta get some knives. I didn't know all of these things. I'm gonna.
Oh my, so many discoveries.
I just barely bought a new pan because ours was the crustiest thing out there.
Oh, we'll
I'm like,
make sure.
Ken-
We'll make sure you're in a better shape than
I'm like,
that.
Ken, why do we feel the need to hold on to this thing, like long after its use? You know, this
Yeah.
is not good. Everything sticks to it. We
Yeah.
finally got another one.
Exactly.
But-
That's why we were like, we need to enter that kitchen. The home kitchen needs some love too.
Yeah, you know what I don't want to give you business advice, but this is what I needed. Somebody
me.
to tell me, you need to do this.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people out there that just have their leftover old kitchenware and they just hold on to it for like 5 more years.
That's a great ad. That's
But
a
then-
great ad.
But then
Thank you for that.
as soon as you get the new one, you're like, why did I wait 3 years
I
to
know.
buy this?
People get our chef's knives now and they're like, I've been living under a rock. I've been cutting my meat with a butter knife. I'm like, I know. Thank you for seeing the light. Yeah.
All right, well, I got to get some knives, some
Yeah,
pans,
get your
some
gear.
apron.
Get your gear on.
Yeah. I'm going to tell my brother-in-law too, he loves cooking.
There you go.
Yeah. So he's big into cooking.
And anytime you see that little ampersand, there's a little red patch on our chest of
All right.
every apron. That's a Headley and Bennett apron
All right.
for everyone listening.
Headley and Bennett.
Headley and
I'm
Bennett.
going to be like, I know Bennett.
I know Bennett.
I know the Bennett. I know Ellen.
Thank
Awesome.
you for
Well,
having me,
yeah,
Chris.
thanks for being here. Look forward to the
Absolutely.
rest of the day.
Thank you.
Okay. Everyone, thanks for joining and listening, watching.
Woo.
It's another episode of the Rooted Leadership Podcast.